after a brutal fall left me injured. My mother yelled, "We're not your damn servants," inside the home I paid for, with them living rent-free, while I lay helpless. But instead of begging, I made one silent move that tore the truth wide open, and what I uncovered changed everything forever. My name is Caleb, I'm 36 years old, I'm quiet by nature, careful with my words, I work in software and I've lived a life that most people wouldn't call exciting, but I've built a good life on my own terms. My mom, Angela, is 61, she used to be soft-spoken and sweet when I was a kid, but something in her shifted after my dad passed away almost 10 years ago. She became sharper, colder, always waiting for someone to step wrong so she could lash out. I've got a younger sister named Brielle, she's 29, loud, dramatic, the kind of person who makes every small issue into a headline story, and her boyfriend Mason moved in with us 2 years ago when he lost his job. He's 34, lazy, manipulative, but charming when he wants to be, and that's how I ended up living in the house I bought with 4 other people who treated me like the invisible roommate, and I didn't even see it happening, not at first. I used to live in a small but clean apartment across town, quiet neighborhood, my own space. I loved it, but after Dad died and Mom started slipping into these depressive spells, I offered to help. I moved back into the house, renovated it using my own savings, updated the floors, fixed the roof, even bought new appliances, all while covering the bills since Mom was on a fixed income and Brielle bounced between minimum wage jobs and wild ideas that never lasted more than a season. I didn't think of it as charity. I thought I was doing the right thing, being a good son, holding the family together. Even when Mason started staying over more often than not, then slowly, somehow, he was just living there, using the car, eating the groceries, acting like he was part of some royalty and I was the servant. I kept my mouth shut though. I worked long hours from my upstairs office, tried to stay out of the way, until the day I fell. It was stupid really. I'd spilled some water on the stairs coming down with a coffee in hand, slipped on the second step, landed hard, twisted something deep in my back, and I couldn't move, just laid there, groaning in pain, for what felt like forever before anyone even noticed. When Mom finally came around the corner, I expected worry or panic, but instead she looked annoyed, rolled her eyes and called for Mason, who dragged me to the couch like I was some old mattress they were hauling out. No one called an ambulance, they just gave me some ibuprofen and told me to tough it out. The next few days were a blur of pain and silence. I couldn't get up without help, I could barely eat unless someone brought me food, and yet not once did anyone ask if I needed anything. They'd leave for hours, come back with takeout for themselves, turn up the TV while I was trying to rest. One night, around 10 p.m., I was trying to shift positions on the couch, the pain shooting up my spine every time I moved. When I accidentally knocked over a glass of water, I called for help, softly at first, then louder. Mom stomped into the room, arms crossed, and snapped, "We're not your damn servants, Caleb, clean up your own mess." I remember blinking at her, stunned, not from the pain this time, but from the sheer meanness in her voice, like I was some entitled burden instead of her son who paid for every inch of this roof. That moment didn't feel real at first, like maybe I was dreaming, maybe the pain meds were messing with my head, but when I saw the look on her face, the disgust, the exhaustion, I knew it was real, and something in me just broke. I didn't yell, I didn't argue, I just stared at the ceiling and decided that as soon as I could stand again, I was done. That night I lay there quietly listening to them laugh in the kitchen while I stared at the flickering shadows on the ceiling, and I made a plan, not revenge, not anger, just silence. I started writing things down on my phone when no one was watching, passwords, account numbers, legal docs. I pulled up every utility bill I paid, every document with my name on it, and began transferring everything into a cloud folder. Even called my lawyer friend Noah to ask how hard it would be to sell a house when you live with uncooperative family. He gave me advice without asking too many questions, which I appreciated. I told him I was just exploring options, and he told me I had every right to do what I wanted with the property as long as I could prove ownership. Turns out I could, easily. The deed was in my name alone, the mortgage was mine, and even though they all treated the house like some community center, legally I was the sole owner. It was mine, every chip tile, every squeaky stair, and I started to remember that slowly, like waking up from a long sleep. But I didn't show anything on my face. I kept quiet, kept pretending to be the weak one, the broken one, until the day I could walk again without help. It took 2 weeks of agonizing baby steps from the couch to the bathroom, small victories that no one noticed, and on a rainy Wednesday morning, I got up early, packed a small bag, and left the house before anyone else woke up. I didn't leave a note, didn't text or call, just walked down the street, caught a rideshare, and went straight to the condo I'd secretly signed for 2 days earlier. Small place, modern kitchen, great view, perfect for a fresh start. I didn't feel joy or guilt or fear, just this strange calm, like something deep in me had settled for the first time in years. I stayed quiet for a week, didn't post anything, didn't answer texts, and when the calls started, I let them go to voicemail. The first few were confused, then angry. Brielle left a message calling me selfish. Mom said I was being dramatic. Mason asked if I was off my meds. None of them asked if I was okay, and that told me everything I needed to know. I called Noah again and said I was ready to sell, and he set the process in motion. While my phone buzzed endlessly, I sat in the quiet of my new space and breathed deeply, for the first time in a decade. And just when I thought I'd finally walked away clean, I got a letter in the mail from an old bank I didn't even remember using, and inside was a key, just a small brass key with a number tag, and nothing else. And that's when I realized this wasn't over, not yet. I held that key in my hand for hours. It was small, cold, looked like it belonged to a safety deposit box or maybe an old storage unit, but I had no memory of renting anything like that. The tag had a number printed on it, 307B, and nothing else, no address, no bank name, just that. And at first I thought maybe it was some kind of mistake, maybe they mailed it to the wrong Caleb, but the envelope had my full name, my legal address, even a return stamp from a city I hadn't visited since I was 16, and that's when it hit me. My dad used to bank in that town, Grayson Falls, tiny place about an hour and a half away. We'd go there when I was a kid, whenever he needed to do grown-up business as he called it, and I'd wait in the lobby of some old building with fake plants and plastic chairs, bored out of my mind. He never told me what he was doing exactly, just always came out with a leather folder and a look of deep thought, like he'd just made some kind of decision that weighed on him. Back then I never asked questions, but now I was starting to wonder if all that banking had something to do with the key, and if it had something to do with me. So I cleared a Saturday and drove out there. The town hadn't changed much, same peeling billboards, same quiet downtown strip with the donut shop that still had the same name, and sure enough, the old Grayson First Trust Bank was still there. Slightly modernized but with the same stone columns and carved letters above the door. I walked in expecting someone to stop me, to ask why I was there, but the clerk barely looked up, just pointed me to the front desk where I asked if they had a deposit box labeled 307B. The woman behind the counter, middle-aged, glasses on a chain, asked for ID, then typed something into the computer, and after a pause, she looked up and said softly, "This account was registered under Charles Merritt, my dad's name." She asked if I had proof of relationship and I handed over my birth certificate and license. She looked again at the screen, then back at me. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He left instructions, in the event of his death, for this box to be given only to you, once you turn 35. My heart kicked a little harder. I was 36. That explained the timing, the letter, the key. I followed her down a narrow hallway, past old security doors and musty paint, until we reached a small metal box. Nothing special, just a dusty old drawer with a worn lock, and when I slid the key in, it clicked like it had been waiting for decades. Inside wasn't stacks of cash or diamonds or anything like that, just two items, a thick sealed envelope and a black velvet pouch tied with a string. I opened the pouch first. Inside was a ring, not just any ring, it looked antique, gold with a deep red stone and an engraving inside that read J. M. to C. M. 1972, my grandparents' initials. I'd never seen this ring before, but I could tell it meant something. The envelope was heavier, filled with documents. I started flipping through and saw titles: life insurance, deed transfer, trust statement, and at the back, a letter in my father's handwriting, my name on the front. And when I opened it, I had to sit down right there in the little security bench because what I read knocked the air right out of me. The letter started simple: Caleb, if you're reading this, I'm already gone, and I know your mother probably didn't tell you half of what you deserve to know, but I need you to understand that this house, this family, and everything we built, there were lies buried in it, and I'm sorry for the part one played. He went on to explain that years ago, when he was first diagnosed with a chronic illness he never told us about, he started putting things in place to make sure I was protected, because he knew Mom had a tendency to make bad financial decisions, and he suspected Brielle and Mason would lean on her if anything ever happened to him. What I didn't know was that the house I'd been paying for all these years wasn't just mine legally, it was mine by his design. He'd transferred ownership to me before he passed but never told anyone, letting Mom believe she still had rights to it so she wouldn't panic. He also mentioned a trust fund, one meant for me, locked until I turned 35, hidden so no one else could touch it. And the documents in that envelope proved it. I was the sole beneficiary of over $300,000, invested and grown over the years, untouched, safe, waiting, and suddenly all the missing pieces of my life made sense. All the times Mom asked for help with the bills, the strange tension after Dad died, the way Brielle and Mason treated me like a walking wallet. They knew I was the one holding everything together, but they didn't know why, and now that I did, I felt this boiling mix of anger and freedom, like someone had finally lifted the curtain and let me see the stage, and I wasn't just some character in their play anymore. I was the one holding the script. I drove back to my condo in silence, letter beside me, ring in my pocket, and when I got there, I did something I never thought I would. I called Mom. I didn't yell, I didn't accuse, I just said I knew everything now, about the trust, the house, the documents, and the silence on the other end was deafening. Finally she said, "So what, you think that makes you better than us?" And I replied, "No, it just means I'm not yours to use anymore." I hung up, blocked her number, and sat by the window watching the city lights flicker, and I realized something even deeper than the money or the property. My dad had tried to protect me, in the quiet way he always did, with paperwork and silence and small acts of love, and even though he wasn't around to see it, I was finally stepping into the life he tried to leave for me, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling that there was still something else I didn't know, because at the very bottom of the envelope, under all the legal documents, was a small photo, folded and worn, of my dad standing next to a woman I didn't recognize, holding a baby that wasn't me. I must have stared at that photo for an hour straight, like if I looked hard enough it would dissolve into something more familiar. My dad looked young in it, maybe early 30s, he was smiling, not that strained polite smile I remember from my childhood, but genuinely smiling, wide and proud. And the woman beside him, she had her hand on his arm like it belonged there, soft eyes, auburn hair tucked behind her ear. And in her arms was a baby, swaddled tight, eyes closed, tiny little thing, and that baby was not me. I wasn't even born yet when this photo was taken. I could tell by the date scribbled on the back in my dad's handwriting, August 1984, W+C, and that hit me like a truck because I was born in late 87, and that meant whatever was in this photo was part of a life he had before me, a life no one ever mentioned, not once, not ever. I kept flipping the picture back and forth, hoping for more clues, but it was just those three initials, W+C, and I didn't know who W was. Or who the baby was supposed to be, but I felt something twist in my stomach, some deep unsettled ache, like the ground had started to crack beneath everything I thought I knew about my family. I didn't sleep much that night, and the next morning I dug through everything my dad had left in that envelope, looking for any clue. There was nothing else about this woman or child, but there was a second bank envelope tucked behind the trust documents, unopened, different bank name, different location. Pleasant Grove Credit Union, and that rang a distant bell, not from my memory, but from one of Mom's stories. I remembered her once complaining to a friend over the phone, talking about that witch from Pleasant Grove and how she nearly ruined everything back then. I was maybe 12 or 13 when I overheard it, didn't think much of it at the time, but now I was starting to wonder if that had something to do with this photo. With W, with the baby. I drove out to Pleasant Grove the next day. It was even smaller than Grayson Falls, barely more than a few blocks, and when I walked into the credit union, I had the same nerves in my gut I'd had at the other bank, like I was trespassing on a life I wasn't supposed to know about. I showed them the envelope and my ID, and once again, the clerk asked me to wait, came back with a manager who invited me into a back room and closed the door behind us. She was in her 50s, gray streak in her ponytail, sharp eyes that flicked between my face and the envelope. She asked, "You're Charles's boy?" And I nodded, and she didn't smile, just gave me this look like she was trying to decide whether I deserved to hear what came next. Finally she said, "Your father set this account up in secret, under a trust for a girl named Willow. He made monthly deposits for years, never missed one, and he instructed us to release the contents only if she or a direct family member ever came asking." I asked if she could tell me who Willow was, and she opened a folder, slid it across the desk, and there it was. Full name Willow Christine Daniels, born August 6, 1984, mother Monica Daniels, father unlisted, and it didn't take much math to figure out that my dad was the missing name on that birth certificate. My chest tightened like a vice. I had a sister, a whole sister, born 3 years before me, and no one ever said a word, not once, not Mom, not Dad, not even in those long quiet conversations where I asked him if he ever missed his youth. He always said he had no regrets, and now I was realizing that was a lie, or maybe it wasn't. Maybe he didn't regret Willow, maybe she was the piece of his heart he kept safe away from all of us. The manager slid another envelope across the table and said, this was written to her, but we were never able to deliver it. Maybe you should be the one to decide what happens to it now." I opened it slowly, and inside was another letter, the same handwriting, but this one was raw, emotional, full of pain and apologies. He wrote to Willow like someone who'd lost everything. He told her he wished he could have raised her, but things got complicated, that he never stopped loving her, that he hoped one day she'd forgive him for disappearing, and at the end, he signed it, "Your father, always, no matter what." I left the bank in a daze, clutching that letter like it was going to vanish if I blinked, and sat in my car for nearly an hour, trying to process what this meant. Did Mom know? Was this what that phone conversation all those years ago was about? And why had my father hidden it all from me, from everyone? Or had he tried to tell someone and been silenced? I drove back to the city, but I didn't go home. I went straight to the public records office and searched for Willow Daniels. It took some time, but I found her. She lived in a nearby city, worked as a nurse, and based on the address I found, she hadn't moved in years. I debated for hours whether I should reach out. I didn't even know if she knew who I was, if she knew who he was, but something deep in me wouldn't let it go, so I wrote her a letter, old-fashioned, respectful, no crazy claims, just a gentle introduction, explained that I believed we might share a father, and included a copy of the photo and a few lines from his letter, and then I mailed it. No return phone number, just an address and a hope that she might read it, that she might want to talk. Days passed, then a week, then two. I was starting to think maybe I'd scared her off, or maybe she threw it away, and then one night, just as I was brushing my teeth, the buzzer rang at my condo door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole and saw a woman standing there, dark red hair tucked behind her ear, holding a worn envelope in her hand, and I swear it was like seeing a ghost from the photo come to life. I opened the door slowly and she said one word, quiet and trembling, "Caleb?" When she said my name, I felt like the ground shifted beneath me, like something old and aching had finally arrived at my doorstep after years of silence. I nodded and said, "Yeah, I'm Caleb," and she looked like she might cry or bolt or both. Instead, she stepped inside when I moved out of the way. We sat at my small kitchen table, the air thick with unspoken things. She held the letter between her fingers like it was made of glass, and said, "I've read this 20 times. I didn't know what to say, so I just asked, did you know about him?" And she nodded slowly, said, "My mom told me his name when I was a teenager, said he left before I was born, said he chose someone else." Her voice cracked a little at that, and I felt this strange guilt bloom in my chest, not because I'd done anything wrong, but because I'd been part of the family he stayed for, the life he built instead of being with her. She went on, said her mom never badmouthed him, just called him young and scared, said he sent money for a while but then it stopped, and she figured he'd moved on, started over. I asked her if she ever tried to find him and she said no, not until she got the letter, said it felt like he reached out from the grave and whispered her name. I could see the resemblance now, the way her jaw set when she was emotional, the crease above her nose when she was thinking hard. She looked like him, more than I did honestly. We talked for hours, shared stories, small things about our childhoods that didn't line up. Hers filled with long hours and a tired mom, mine with quiet meals and a dad who never quite smiled the same after certain dates. And then she asked the question I was dreading, why didn't he come back? And I didn't have a clean answer for her, only what I'd pieced together from his letter and the whispers of mom's rage over the years. I told her I thought maybe my mom didn't give him the choice, that maybe she found out and gave him an ultimatum, that he chose the family he'd already made out of fear or guilt or love, or maybe all three. And Willow just sat there, staring at the ring I'd placed on the table, the one with the engraving. I asked if she wanted it and she shook her head, said, "It was his, but it belongs to both of us now." And I knew what she meant, that grief wasn't something one person could carry alone, not when it was about someone who meant something to both of us in such different, painful ways. After that night we started talking more, not every day but enough to build something real. We met for coffee, shared photos. She showed me a picture of her daughter, 6 years old and bright as the sun, and I felt something click inside me, like maybe this loss had given me something too, a niece I never knew I had, a sister who felt like a missing limb, a chance to start a new kind of family from the ashes of the old one. But the peace didn't last long, because word finally reached my mother and Brielle. I don't know who told them first. Maybe someone at the old bank, or maybe Mason snooping around after I cut them off financially. But one morning I woke up to find my inbox flooded with messages, most of them venom, Mom accusing me of betraying her, of dragging up ancient mistakes, Brielle calling me every name under the sun, even threatening to sue for her share of Dad's inheritance, which was laughable considering she'd never worked a day for it, and I ignored it all until Mom showed up at my condo one rainy afternoon. Uninvited and furious, she didn't knock, just banged until I opened the door, soaking wet and wild-eyed, and the first thing she said was, "How dare you?" I didn't even invite her in, just stood there letting the rain hit her, and I said, "How dare you hide my sister from me?" And she flinched like I'd slapped her. She said it wasn't that simple, that my father had made mistakes, that he promised to leave that part of his life behind, that he chose us, and I said, "He didn't choose us, he settled for us because you made sure he had no other option." She accused me of being ungrateful, of turning my back on the family that raised me, and I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so twisted. I said, "You mean the family that left me on a couch in pain, that called me a burden in the house I paid for?" And she went quiet then, her rage collapsing into something smaller. She muttered, "You don't understand what it was like," and I said, "No, I never will, because you never let me in." I didn't yell, I didn't slam the door, I just said, "You need to leave," and when she didn't move, I added, "You already lost Dad, and now you've lost me too." And that finally broke her. She turned and walked away, rain streaking down her face like tears, though I couldn't tell if they were real or just the storm. After that, everything happened fast. The house was officially sold within weeks, the lawyer handled it cleanly, I got a generous offer from a family moving in from out of state, and I took it, didn't even go back to pack anything, let the movers handle it. The place didn't feel like home anyway, just a museum of pain and manipulation. I moved the final documents into a digital vault, set up a separate trust for Willow's daughter using a chunk of the inheritance, and started working on something else, something that felt like healing. I used part of the money to start a small grant in my dad's name, something that would help young single parents go to school or start over, because maybe, just maybe, that was something he would have done if he'd had the chance. And I didn't tell anyone about it except Willow, who cried when I showed her the paperwork, said it felt like a piece of him had finally come back to her, and in that moment, sitting side by side at a cafe with the rain tapping the window, I felt something new blooming in my chest, not grief, not rage, but peace, soft and slow and real. It's been almost a year now since that day I left the house without a word, a year since I vanished from the life that treated me like a shadow, and you know what's strange? I don't miss it, not the house, not the arguments, not even the rhythm of family noise in the background. I thought I would, I thought the silence would swallow me up, but instead, it wrapped around me like peace, like breath, like finally coming home to myself. I've learned a lot since then, not just about my dad and the sister he left behind, but about who I am when no one's telling me who I'm supposed to be. My days look different now. I wake up in a space that's mine, with sunlight streaming through clean windows and the hum of coffee brewing just for me. I work on my own terms, take breaks when I need to, listen to music that makes my soul feel full. Sometimes Willow and I talk late into the night, sometimes we drive out to parks with her daughter, watch her run and laugh and fall in the grass. I tell stories about a man she never met, stories Willow never got to hear either. We piece him together like a puzzle, quiet and careful, filling in the gaps with love instead of blame. I don't ask Mom for anything anymore, not updates, not apologies. I heard through a cousin that she and Brielle moved into a rental after the house sold, that Mason's gone now, finally vanished when the money dried up, and part of me feels a flicker of sadness for them, but only for a moment, because they made their choices. They chose to see me as a wallet with legs instead of a son or a brother, and when I needed them most, they couldn't even give me a glass of water without turning it into a war. I still remember the way my mom said it, "We're not your damn servants," like I was some ungrateful king demanding feasts, when all I needed was kindness, decency, care, and the irony is, I would have done anything for them, had done everything for them, right up until I couldn't anymore, right up until I remembered that I mattered too. And you know what I've realized? Sometimes the hardest thing in the world isn't standing up to a stranger or even to an enemy. It's standing up to the people you love when they're the ones breaking you. It's saying no to the very hands that raised you when those hands start to take instead of give. I don't know if my mom will ever understand what she did. I don't think she sees it as betrayal, more like survival. She's always lived with this twisted idea that suffering justifies cruelty, that because she hurt, she was allowed to hurt others. But I'm not carrying that legacy anymore. I've buried it, walked away from it, left it on the porch of a house that isn't mine anymore, and in its place, I'm building something new. I'm building trust with a sister I should have grown up with. I'm building safety with a niece who hugs me like I'm made of magic. I'm building a quiet kind of strength that doesn't shout or prove itself, it just exists, solid and steady. And I think that's the kind of man my dad hoped I'd become, not perfect, not wealthy or famous, just whole, just true. I've taken that ring, the one with the engraving, and I had it resized and placed in a small glass box on my shelf, next to a photo of Dad, and now one of Willow too. We're both in it, smiling at a picnic table, arms slung around each other like we've done this our whole lives, and it makes me wonder sometimes what life would have looked like if none of the secrets had been kept, if Willow had grown up down the hall instead of across the state, if Dad had spoken the truth sooner, if Mom had been brave enough to share instead of hide. But then again, maybe we wouldn't be who we are now if things had gone differently. Maybe we had to lose everything to find each other. Maybe the brokenness was the path, not the punishment. And now I think of healing like a house too, not the kind you pay for with mortgages or paint in warm colors, but the kind you live in quietly inside yourself, the kind that stays standing when the storm finally passes. And this time, this house, this life, it's mine, all of it, built not from obligation or guilt, but from truth, from choice, from starting over even when it hurts. So if you ever find yourself lying on a couch, hurt and ignored in the home you built, remember this: sometimes the loudest thing you can say is nothing at all. Sometimes vanishing is the first step to being seen, and sometimes the greatest gift you'll ever give yourself is the space to begin again. Thanks for watching. If you liked the story, hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more crazy twists. See you in the next one.